Sometimes the deadliest storms don't arrive with thunder, but with a whisper, a glance, a secret left unspoken. Trust isn't shattered all at once, it fractures, quietly, like glass beneath slow pressure, until it breaks. Mistress stabbed pregnant in rage, but she never expected what the billionaire did. Next, an echo of thunder rattled the tall windows that night, hinting at the storm of revelations waiting to unfold. Little did anyone know that behind the ornate gates of the Whitmore estate lurked a jealousy more lethal than lightning. With the city's elite gathered for a lavish soiree, the stage was set for a betrayal so shocking it would unearth carefully guarded secrets and shatter the illusions of a perfect marriage. Hidden in the shadows, one woman's rage was about to descend upon an unsuspecting victim, forging a path of vengeance and heartbreak no one could have predicted tonight. In the affluent neighborhood of Oakmere Hills, the Whitmore estate stood as a symbol of both opulence and an unattainable dream. Its tall gates, surrounded by perfectly trimmed hedges, beckoned visitors into a world ruled by lavish soirees, polished marble floors, and gleaming chandeliers. For years, Nathan Whitmore, a billionaire born into generational wealth, maintained an enviable reputation among the city's elite. People whispered about his business acumen, his philanthropic efforts, and the marriage that seemed too perfect to be true. Nathan's wife, Claire Whitmore, was pregnant with their first child. The news had swept through Oakmere Hills like a warm breeze, bringing hopeful smiles to friends and acquaintances who admired the Whitmores' seemingly unbreakable bond. Claire, a beloved school teacher before her marriage, had put her career on pause to focus on this new phase of her life. She was radiant with maternal pride, her every movement suffused with the quiet excitement of impending motherhood. Standing at Nathan's side, Claire appeared unshakable, her trust in her husband unwavering. Behind the smiles and the show of unity, however, subtle cracks began to form. Claire felt them in fleeting moments. The late-night phone calls Nathan never explained, the visits he made to a new property investment in the city's downtown area, the subtle shift in his demeanor whenever the conversation drifted toward the future. On one hand, Nathan would speak about nursery decorations. On the other, a shadow would cloud his eyes whenever Claire touched on the subject of their baby's name or schooling plans. She tried to rationalize these observations, telling herself that Nathan was just nervous about becoming a father or overwhelmed with his business deals. At the Whitmore's annual masquerade ball, an event so elaborately organized that it set the city's social calendar, Claire first saw Layla. Beautiful, yet understated, Layla didn't command the room with flashy attire or loud conversation. Instead, she exuded a quiet confidence and curiosity that lingered in her gaze. Claire caught Layla looking in Nathan's direction more than once, a normal enough occurrence. She supposed Nathan was, after all, not only wealthy but handsome, with a natural charisma that made him the center of attention. Yet something in Layla's expression was far from friendly admiration. It was as if she was silently claiming possession of the man Claire believed was hers alone. The days passed uneventfully after that fateful ball, but Claire found herself ruminating on Layla's face, the depth of her stare and the unsettling sense that Layla had intentionally drifted into the Whitmore orbit. She confided in her oldest friend, Rachel Donovan, a nurse who had known the couple since their college days. Rachel tried to soothe Claire's anxieties, attributing them to pregnancy hormones and the stress of a high-society life. But as Claire's suspicions grew more concrete, she felt compelled to act. Late one evening, while Nathan was showering after a long day at work, Claire gathered the courage to scroll through his text messages, a boundary she never thought she would cross. Her heart pounded so violently that she worried the sound might echo through the marble corridors. Despite Nathan's typical caution, he must have made a mistake. A series of texts glowed on the screen from a contact labeled A. They were cryptic, and at first glance might have been attributed to a business associate, talk of meeting times, hush-hush deals, and property mentions. But the tone was not professional. Beneath each exchange ran a current of something personal and intimate that made Claire's hands tremble. Nathan exited the shower, and in a panic, Claire nearly dropped the phone. Hastily, she put it back where she found it and slipped out of the room before he noticed her presence. Deep down, she already knew that the A in Nathan's phone stood for Layla. That single piece of knowledge was the first fissure in the veneer of Claire's perfect life, one that threatened to shatter everything she believed in. Claire tried to confront Nathan about the messages a week later, but her courage faltered. The moment he breathed through the front door, exuding exhaustion and a vague sense of irritation, she watched him in silence, her trembling lips unable to voice the accusations swirling in her mind. She wanted evidence, something more concrete than suspicious texts and a single unsettling impression from the masquerade ball. Yet she felt her baby move inside her, a gentle reminder of the life they'd created together, and a wave of anger at the possibility that Nathan might betray not just her, but their unborn child. Days turned into nights of anxious vigilance. Claire found herself scrolling through social media, scanning event photographs, and even glancing through Oakmere Hill's gossip columns in search of any mention of Layla. Each search left her emptier than the last, her fingers trembling as she refreshed pages, hoping to catch a mistake she couldn't unsee. Bits of rumor surfaced, carrying claims that Layla was the daughter of a local real estate magnate who had fallen on hard times. Others hinted at scandal, an inheritance lost to reckless investments, whispered rumors of lawsuits quietly buried by powerful connections. Her name appeared in connection with various charity galas, but it was never accompanied by a clear identity or background. There was talk of her being an interior decorator, a traveling photographer, and even a corporate consultant, none of which Claire could verify. Despite the mismatch of details, it was evident. Layla had a way of inserting herself into elite circles with minimal fuss. Claire's once peaceful nights became plagued with nightmares, each dream morphing into a twisted replay of Nathan confessing his love for another woman, or Layla smirking behind a mask while Claire stood alone in an empty nursery. Sometimes she woke in a cold sweat, hand instinctively cradling her belly, whispering apologies to her unborn child for dragging them through this storm. The stress began to wear on Claire's health. She developed headaches, and her doctor, Naomi Brooks, a trusted OB/GYN at Oakmere Hills Medical Center, urged her to prioritize her emotional well-being. Stress is dangerous during pregnancy, Dr. Brooks reminded Claire gently during a routine checkup. Nothing is worth risking your health or your baby's. Yet the gnawing suspicion only grew, fueled by brief glimpses of Nathan's phone lighting up during dinner, his hurried apologies as he stepped out to take calls, and the mild annoyance he displayed whenever Claire gently probed him about who he was speaking with. His eyes no longer lit up when she entered the room. There was a hollowness in his smile now, like he was only half present, one foot in their home, the other already walking away. Once, she caught him on the phone near the estate's garden. He abruptly ended the conversation the moment he saw her. The look on his face shifted between guilt and frustration, leaving Claire even more certain that something was wrong. One afternoon, in a moment of steely resolve, Claire left the house with a clear objective: to find Layla. She drove to an upscale bistro called L'Amour, a known hangout for the city's wealthy. She had overheard Nathan mention it on a phone call earlier that week. Sitting at a corner table, Claire nursed a cup of herbal tea, scanning the room for the woman who had haunted her dreams. Suddenly, there she was, Layla, stepping into L'Amour with effortless elegance. She wore a simple black dress that clung to her figure, her polished demeanor radiating a subtle air of confidence. Strangely, she seemed to be alone. Claire waited, pulse racing, to see if Nathan would appear. Instead, Layla took a seat at the bar and exchanged familiar pleasantries with the bartender, who nodded at something she said before disappearing to fulfill her order. Summoning her courage, Claire approached. "Excuse me," she began, her voice wavering just enough that Layla noticed. "I was wondering if we could talk." Layla glanced at Claire's pregnant belly, then back up to her face, recognition flashing in her eyes. "Of course," Layla replied smoothly, her voice betraying no surprise. "Claire Whitmore, right?" The fact that Layla already knew her name was a jolt to Claire's system. She wondered if it signaled that Layla had been preparing for this confrontation. Taking a seat beside her, Claire tried to sound calm. "I've seen you at events. I just wanted to introduce myself and maybe ask you about something I can't quite place." Isla's lips curled in a slight smile, I only attend a handful of events, but I recall the Whitmore masquerade ball. You have a beautiful home. That observation, so politely stated, flamed Claire's insecurities. She took a breath, glancing at Isla's manicured hands, the flawless makeup, and the subtle yet unquestionably expensive jewelry. The resentment that had built up within Claire threatened to erupt, but she fought for composure, reminding herself that she needed the truth before giving in to fury. "You're being so formal," Claire said quietly. "But I have to ask, do you know my husband, Nathan Whitmore?" The question hung in the air, and time seemed to slow. Isla took a sip of the cocktail placed before her, a practiced movement that gave her a moment to choose her words. "We've crossed paths," she said at last. Strictly in a business context, Claire's instinct screamed that Isla was lying. She saw it in the brief hesitation, the flicker in Isla's eyes. Yet, as if mocking Claire's attempt at confrontation, Isla maintained a front of cordial detachment. Pushing further, Claire pressed, "And that business would be?" A flicker of annoyance crossed Isla's face. "You should ask your husband. If you have questions, Mrs. Whitmore, he would know best how to explain it." Her tone remained polite, yet it carried a note of veiled challenge. The tension between them was unbearable. Claire could feel her heart pounding in her ears, the very air thick with unspoken accusations. Struggling to keep her composure, she quickly apologized and left, unsettled by the encounter. Every fiber of her being wanted to scream at Isla, to accuse her of being the reason Nathan was pulling away. But in that carefully curated social environment, Claire found herself immobilized by the rules of politeness and public decorum. Driving home, she was plagued by questions. Had she just made a fool of herself? If Isla truly was involved in a legitimate business arrangement with Nathan, what right did Claire have to barge in on that conversation? Yet her instincts told her otherwise. She vowed that if Isla was indeed Nathan's mistress, Claire would protect her marriage and unborn child, no matter the cost. Claire's suspicions were confirmed one fateful evening when Nathan claimed he had to work late at the office. Certain that he was lying, Claire decided to follow him. She drove discreetly behind Nathan's car until it stopped at a swanky downtown apartment complex. From a distance, she watched him enter the building. Anxious, she waited in her car until he emerged an hour later, with none other than Isla on his arm. He leaned in to whisper something that made her laugh, and a knife of betrayal tore through Claire's chest. Claire wanted to fling open the car door and confront them, but a paralyzing shock and heartbreak kept her rooted to her seat. She felt tears burn her eyes as her husband gently guided Isla to a parked sports car. The moment they disappeared into the night, Claire broke into anguished sobs. Doubt and delusions were no longer possible. Reality had slapped her in the face. Her marriage was not the fairy tale she had believed it to be. She was a wife scorned, pregnant with a child whose father was stepping into another woman's arms. The drive home was a blur of tears, anger, and confusion. That night, Claire could barely sleep. Her mind replayed the image of Nathan and Isla together on an endless loop. The next morning, she confronted Nathan with unwavering resolve. Her voice trembled with fury as she demanded he explain himself. At first, Nathan tried to dodge her accusations, claiming that Isla was an investor in one of his startup projects, someone who required delicate handling because of her family's complicated finances. Claire refused to be placated by corporate jargon or half-baked excuses. "I followed you," she finally admitted, her voice shaking. "I saw you with her. Tell me the truth, or pack your bags." Nathan's expression crumbled. He sank onto the couch in the living room, pressing his hands to his face. For a moment, Claire thought she saw genuine remorse in his eyes. He confessed to meeting Isla for business, but admitted that their relationship had grown intimate. "It was a mistake," he insisted. "I got swept up and she was there offering support at a time. I was overwhelmed with everything. Your pregnancy, the expansions, the looming deadlines. I never meant for it to go this far." Shaking with anger, Claire demanded to know if his affair was ongoing. Nathan hesitated, which was all the answer she needed. The betrayal settled over her like a lead blanket. Everything felt shattered. Her trust, her sense of security, the bright future she had imagined for their soon-to-be-born child. Nathan pleaded with Claire to give him time to fix things, but it was painfully clear that he was flailing between guilt for hurting Claire and an undeniable pull toward Layla. His apologies rang hollow, his promises too late, and Claire found herself staring at a man she barely recognized, one who had traded loyalty for lust. Over the next week, Claire oscillated between sobbing rages and moments of cold detachment. She refused to share a bed with Nathan, choosing instead to sleep in the guest room. At night, she would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the same hands that once held her so tenderly could now hold secrets behind her back. Feeling isolated, she reached out to her friend Rachel, who arrived at the estate and was horrified by Claire's deteriorating emotional state. Rachel urged Nathan to stay away while she helped Claire pack a small bag. If Claire couldn't find peace under the same roof as her unfaithful husband, then it might be best for her to spend a few days at Rachel's apartment to gather her thoughts. Nathan didn't fight it. He simply stood in the doorway, silent, as Claire zipped her suitcase, his guilt heavy in the air, like fog too thick to move through. Claire relented, craving a moment of clarity away from the opulent yet suffocating corridors of the Whitmore estate. She tearfully told Nathan she needed space, that she needed to protect herself and their child from the toxicity his betrayal had unleashed. As Claire settled into Rachel's modest but cozy apartment, she wrestled with the question that plagued her the most. Should she try to salvage her marriage for the sake of her baby? Or should she leave Nathan altogether and face life as a single mother? One minute she would imagine them healing, starting over. The next, she would picture herself delivering alone, free from lies, but heavy with loneliness. Each day brought fresh waves of doubt, but one thing was certain. Claire was determined to confront Layla directly and make it clear that she would not allow this betrayal to go unnoticed or unpunished. Claire's opportunity came when she returned to the Whitmore estate to retrieve some personal belongings she'd left behind. The household staff informed her that Nathan had gone out and wouldn't return until late. No sooner had Claire stepped upstairs to the master bedroom than she heard the front door open and close. Expecting one of the maids, she paid it little mind until she heard a woman's voice calling out Nathan's name. Tensing, Claire peered over the railing and saw Layla standing in the foyer, wearing a sleek coat and carrying what looked like an overnight bag. The brazenness of the act stunned Claire. Not only was Layla intruding on her marital home, but she apparently believed she had every right to do so. Fury roiled in Claire's gut. She made her way downstairs, determined to expel the intruder. Layla froze, surprise flickering across her face as Claire approached. "Where is Nathan?" Layla asked, her tone subdued but her posture defensive. A trembling rage took hold of Claire. "He's not here," she answered icily. "But I am. The pregnant wife, the one whose life you've helped ruin." Isla's expression shifted from annoyance to something like pity. "I'm not here to fight," she said softly, "but I do love Nathan, and I won't let you stand in the way of that." Claire's jaw dropped. For a moment she was rendered speechless by the audacity of the statement. Then her voice erupted in raw fury, echoing off the marble floors. "Stand in the way of it? He's my husband. That child I'm carrying is his child. You're the one who shouldn't even be here." Their argument escalated rapidly. Accusations flew like daggers, each woman blaming the other for the ugly, complicated predicament. Layla insisted that Nathan had promised to leave Claire, that he had fallen out of love with her long before the affair began. Claire, in turn, berated Layla for preying on a vulnerable man who was going through a stressful time, for seducing a married man and undermining a future family's happiness. In the midst of this chaotic exchange, Layla's composure snapped. Her face twisted with anger as she launched into a tirade about how Claire had everything: wealth, social standing, and now a child. Layla had been born into privilege, yes, but her family had lost most of its fortune years ago. She was fighting tooth and nail to keep herself afloat in the world she believed was rightfully hers. Nathan, she argued, was the only person who truly understood her desperation and ambition. Claire shook with hurt and fury. She thought about all the nights she had envisioned the life she and Nathan would build, raising a child, supporting each other's dreams, growing old together. Now all those hopes lay in tatters. "I've had enough," Claire hissed, pointing toward the door. "Get out of my house, and out of my marriage." Isla's eyes flashed with a savage kind of triumph. "This might be your house for now," she said. "But don't forget, Nathan invited me here. He wants me here." Before Claire could respond, Layla turned on her heel and marched toward the door, her heels clicking against the polished floor. That single confrontation felt like a watershed moment, one in which Claire realized that Layla wouldn't just evaporate from their lives. She was deeply entangled with Nathan, and short of legal measures, Claire saw no clear path to remove her. Torn between despair and rage, Claire sank to her knees, letting out a broken sob that echoed through the corridors of the Whitmore estate. Claire retreated once more to Rachel's apartment, where she spent days locked in internal debates about how to salvage or end her marriage. Nathan called repeatedly, leaving messages that ranged from tearful apologies to angry demands that she return home. At times, Rachel took the phone and warned Nathan to stay away until Claire had made a decision. One afternoon, Claire found an envelope slipped under Rachel's door. Inside was a letter from Layla. The note was brief but dripping with arrogance. "Claire, I wanted to apologize if my words seemed harsh the last time we spoke. The truth is that Nathan has grown distant from you, and we're building something that fulfills him in a way you never could. I know how it feels to be desperate, so I extend my sympathy. But let's be honest, he doesn't look at you the way he looks at me. And some things just can't be undone. But remember, no relationship stays the same forever. Layla." Claire stared at the letter for a long time, her fingers trembling. The paper crinkled under her grip as her stomach twisted with a sickening blend of humiliation and rage. That anyone could be so cruel made her stomach churn with nausea and fury. Each word felt like a blade, designed to pierce her where it hurt most: her pride, her worth, her place in Nathan's life. It was as if Layla was taunting her, daring her to admit defeat. Later that evening, Claire's phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "I'm sorry, let's talk. Meet me at Oakmere Hills Park tomorrow at noon." Her immediate reaction was anger, but a part of her needed closure, or at least clarity. She nearly threw the phone across the room, but something in her, some fragile shard of hope or fury, stopped her. She owed it to herself and her unborn child to see if Nathan could be honest. The next day, Claire arrived at the park. She spotted Nathan sitting on a bench near the lake, staring at the water with a troubled expression. For a brief moment, she remembered the man she had fallen in love with, the one who had once brought her to this exact spot to propose under the glow of fairy lights. That night had been filled with promises, soft laughter, and dreams they had dared to whisper. Now, all of it felt like another lifetime. The distance between them felt immeasurable. Without preamble, Claire approached. "What do you want?" she asked, refusing to soften her tone. Nathan turned, and she saw that he looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes. "I want to fix this," he began. "I want my child to grow up with two parents who love them. I know I made a mistake, a huge mistake, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Claire's anger flared. "You're willing to do whatever it takes? How about ending your relationship with Layla?" Nathan hesitated, his silence speaking volumes. The wind rustled the autumn leaves around them, filling the emptiness of that pause with nature's whispered accusations. "Finally," he said, "I don't know if I can just let her go. I'm conflicted." Claire could almost hear her heart splinter. "You're choosing to be conflicted over your wife and child? You're actually debating whether you should leave the woman you had an affair with?" Nathan ran his hands through his hair, frustration evident. "It's not that simple, Claire. You have everything. Layla doesn't. She's—" Claire interrupted him, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Are you hearing yourself? You're prioritizing your mistress's emotional needs over your pregnant wife's well-being?" He reached for her, but she pulled back. Tears stung her eyes, and she hated him for making her feel so powerless. "I'm done," she managed to choke out. "If you can't choose us, then I'll make the choice for you." She turned on her heel and left, ignoring his calls for her to wait. She felt that any moment she lingered would only deepen the pain. Despite her brave words, that night was one of the hardest of Claire's life. She collapsed into sobs, comforted only by Rachel's unwavering support. What haunted her most was the sense of looming danger. Isla's note echoed in her mind, a grim reminder that Layla was not content to remain quietly in the background. There was a predatory edge to her actions, a vibe that suggested she would do anything, absolutely anything, to secure Nathan for herself. About a week later, a surprising visitor knocked on Rachel's apartment door. Detective Marcus Grant, wearing a worn trench coat and sporting a sympathetic gaze, introduced himself. He mentioned that he was investigating a break-in and vandalism case at the Whitmore estate. Nathan had reported that someone had broken into Claire's old art studio at the back of the property, smashing several paintings she had created and leaving behind hateful graffiti directed at her. Detective Grant asked Claire if she had any idea who might hold a grudge against her. Stunned, Claire could only think of one name, Layla. However, she lacked proof. "I have an enemy," she admitted, the word feeling foreign on her tongue. "But I can't say for sure it's her. She's involved with my husband." She detailed the affair and Isla's threatening behavior, including the letter. Although Grant listened patiently, Claire sensed his skepticism. Isla, after all, came from a socially well-connected family. The detective assured Claire that he'd look into the matter, but reminded her that the case hinged on evidence. While the investigation took place, Claire found herself clinging to her last reserves of resolve. With Rachel's help, she filed for a temporary restraining order against Layla, citing the threatening letter and the disturbing vandalism at the estate. Though uncertain if it would be granted, Claire felt a bit of relief taking proactive steps. A week later, a judge granted the order, mandating that Layla keep her distance from Claire under penalty of legal repercussions. Still, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that a piece of paper wouldn't stop a woman who had already drawn blood. Even this legal measure felt like a band-aid over a wound that was still bleeding each day. Claire's pregnancy advanced, bringing her closer to a delivery date she had once viewed as the culmination of her happiest dreams. Now, it felt overshadowed by heartbreak and the constant gnaw of fear that Layla's aggression might escalate. Each flutter of the baby's movements brought both comfort and dread, reminders of life growing inside her, even as danger stalked just beyond the walls. It was around this time that Nathan began to call again, more frequently. Sometimes Claire answered in a moment of weakness, hoping for a miracle. Each conversation ended in tears and frustration. Nathan still professed love for Claire but refused to cut Layla out of his life completely. As infuriating as it was, Claire almost felt sorry for him. He sounded like a man trapped between guilt and lust, unwilling to do the hard work of choosing a path and dealing with the consequences. But pity could only go so far, especially when it was her safety, her sanity, and her child's life at stake. In quieter moments, Claire found herself blaming not just Layla, but also Nathan, for giving Layla the power to destroy their marriage. He hadn't protected their home. He hadn't protected her. She vowed that if Nathan couldn't make the right decision, she would. A plan began to form in the back of her mind, to leave Oakmere Hills altogether, start fresh in another city where she could raise her child without the specter of infidelity looming over her. Yet a lingering part of her still yearned to see if Nathan would come around, if the man she once knew would fight for his family instead of clinging to a doomed affair. That hope, fragile and flickering, was the only thing that kept her from packing her bags that very night. One stormy evening, just as the last vestiges of daylight surrendered to night, Claire found herself alone at Rachel's place. Rachel had gone to cover a double shift at the hospital. The wind howled outside, lightning flickering across the apartment's windows. Claire tried to distract herself by browsing online baby items, selecting pastel-colored blankets and nursery furniture that might bring comfort in the uncertain future ahead. Suddenly, a frantic pounding rattled the door. Claire's heart leapt into her throat. She approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. To her horror, she recognized Layla. Her hair and coat were soaked from the rain, her eyes wide with a feverish intensity. Claire's first instinct was to ignore her, pretend she wasn't there. But Layla began shouting, her voice muffled by the door, yet still clear enough to convey desperation. "Open up, Claire. I need to talk to you. It's about Nathan." Claire's mind whirled with conflicting emotions. Was Nathan hurt? Did Layla have something important to say? She hesitated, acutely aware of the restraining order, but concern for Nathan overrode her caution. She opened the door a crack, bracing her foot against it in case Layla tried to force her way in. "What do you want?" she demanded, struggling to keep her voice steady. Isla's eyes flickered to the door chain. "Nathan is in trouble," she claimed breathlessly. "He got into a car accident and he's asking for you. He won't talk to me." Claire's heart lurched. She pictured Nathan lying in a hospital bed, calling her name in pain. Despite the anger she felt, the bond they shared was not so easily severed. "Where is he?" she asked, her voice trembling. That split second of distraction was all Layla needed. She shoved the door with surprising strength, dislodging the chain and knocking Claire backward. Startled and off balance, Claire fell to the floor. Layla charged inside, slamming the door shut behind her. Before Claire could get up, Layla was standing over her, eyes blazing with malevolent intent. "You stupid, spoiled brat," Layla hissed, her voice shaking. "You think you can hide behind a piece of paper and keep Nathan away from me?" Claire's voice caught in her throat. She tried to crawl backward, but Layla lunged. "I said stay away!" Claire screamed, reaching for her phone to call for help. Layla snatched the phone and flung it across the room, where it shattered against the wall. Fury contorted Isla's features. "He's mine," she spat. "I don't care about your baby, your marriage, or your threats. Do you think that restraining order would keep me from taking what's mine?" Claire tried to calm her, but Layla was beyond reason. "You destroyed his love for me by getting pregnant," Layla continued, her voice cracking with an irrational edge. "You're the one who manipulated him, trapping him with this child." A surge of protectiveness flared in Claire, overshadowing her fear. "I didn't manipulate him," she snapped. "We were married. We wanted this baby together." Layla let out a bitter laugh. "He doesn't want it anymore." Her hand slid inside her coat. Before Claire realized what was happening, Layla pulled out a small knife, its blade gleaming in the flickering light. Claire felt her stomach twist in terror. She tried to scramble to her feet, but Layla moved with a sudden burst of violence. She swung the knife toward Claire, who instinctively raised her arm to protect her belly. A searing pain tore through Claire's arm. Gasping, she watched blood trickle down her sleeve. Summoning adrenaline-fueled strength, Claire kicked at Layla, momentarily throwing her off balance. Layla stumbled, and Claire tried to rush for the door, but Layla recovered faster than Claire expected, grabbing her by the hair and yanking her back. Claire shrieked, the sound echoing in the small apartment. "You should have stayed away," Layla screamed, bringing the knife down again. This time Claire twisted her body to shield her pregnant belly, taking the blow to her side. Agony radiated through her. She felt warm blood pooling, staining her clothes. Dazed and in shock, Claire collapsed to her knees, instinct screaming for her to protect her unborn child at all costs. In the background, Claire heard voices shouting from the hallway. Neighbors had heard the commotion, and someone banged on the door. "Is everything okay in there?" A muffled voice called. The door burst open under a neighbor's force, just as Layla raised the knife once more. Panicking, Layla turned and fled through another exit, a small balcony door that opened onto a narrow fire escape. As the neighbors rushed in to help, Claire clutched her belly, tears streaming down her face. She felt the baby move faintly, a relief so profound that she broke into a sob as pain flared mercilessly. Blood stained the floor around her, and darkness threatened to close in. Someone called an ambulance, and sirens soon pierced the night. Claire held on to consciousness with every ounce of willpower, silently begging her unborn child to stay strong. When Claire next opened her eyes, she found herself in a hospital bed, hooked to an IV. Rachel sat beside her, clasping her hand. A surge of gratitude washed over Claire at the sight of her friend's worried but comforting presence. Dr. Naomi Brooks entered, her gentle face marred by concern. "You're lucky," she said softly. "The wounds are serious, but you and the baby are stable. We had to give you a transfusion. You'll need time to heal, physically and emotionally." Claire nodded weakly, tears of relief gathering in her eyes. I was so scared," she whispered, her voice shaking. She glanced down at her bandaged side and arm, wincing at the memory of Isla's blade tearing through her flesh. A uniformed police officer, accompanied by Detective Marcus Grant, appeared at the doorway. Detective Grant's normally stern face was suffused with sympathy as he took in Claire's condition. "Ms. Whitmore," he began gently, "we've issued a warrant for Isla's arrest. Your neighbor's statements corroborate your account. We'll find her." "Where is Nathan?" The question slipped from Claire's lips before she even realized she'd asked it. Rachel squeezed her hand, as if apologizing. Detective Grant cleared his throat. "He's on his way here. We spoke to him. He was distraught when he heard what happened." Part of Claire wanted to see Nathan, needed the comfort of the man she had once loved so deeply. Another part felt a cold fury at his role in enabling Isla's presence in their lives. His failure to draw boundaries had left her bleeding on a hospital bed. If he had cut Isla off earlier, would they be in this situation now? A few hours later, Nathan walked into the hospital room. He looked drawn and haggard, as if he hadn't slept in days. Guilt hung over him like a storm cloud. He paused at the doorway, unsure if he even had the right to enter. Claire refused to meet his gaze at first. Instead, she stared at the sterile white walls, replaying the harrowing events in her mind. The beep of the monitor beside her was the only sound between them, steady, unforgiving. "I'm so sorry," Nathan croaked, his voice heavy. "I never thought Isla would do something like this." Claire swallowed hard, her voice trembling with a mixture of pain and anger. "But she did, because of you, Nathan, because you couldn't let her go." He fell to his knees beside the hospital bed, tears brimming in his eyes. "I know I've made terrible mistakes. I swear I had no idea she was capable of violence. I was going to end it with her. She wouldn't accept it." Claire closed her eyes, feeling drained beyond measure. "I don't know how to trust you anymore," she whispered. "She tried to kill me, Nathan. She tried to kill our baby." Her voice cracked on the last word, and for a moment, even Nathan's breath hitched. He bowed his head. "I'll do anything," he murmured, voice cracking. "Anything to make this right." But the damage was done. Claire felt a profound emptiness, an unbearable weight of betrayal, fear, and heartbreak. She knew she wasn't ready to forgive. The stabbing had ripped open not just her body, but the illusions she had harbored about her marriage. Every vow, every promise, every dream now lay in shards around her hospital bed. As Nathan hunched over in remorse, Claire felt only a hollow ache, uncertain if time or love could ever mend what was now broken. Isla was apprehended 2 days later at a motel just outside Oakmere Hills. The story of the billionaire's pregnant wife stabbed by the mistress spread through local media like wildfire. Gossip columns feasted on every salacious detail, painting Isla as an unhinged gold digger who had targeted Nathan Whitmore for his wealth and influence. Overnight, Isla's social standing disintegrated. Acquaintances, upon hearing the news, distanced themselves in record time. Detective Grant led the investigation with a thoroughness that bordered on relentless, determined to compile airtight evidence against Isla. Security footage from Rachel's apartment complex corroborated witness accounts. Additionally, the judge had already granted Claire a restraining order. Isla had violated it in the most violent way possible, cementing the severity of her crime. Charges against Isla ranged from aggravated assault to attempted murder. Meanwhile, Nathan tried desperately to reconcile with Claire, making daily visits to the hospital until she was discharged. He offered to hire the best private security to protect her. He suggested therapy sessions, tearfully insisting that he realized now what he stood to lose. Yet each time Claire saw him, she was reminded of the depth of his betrayal. While she appreciated his sudden concern, the emotional wounds ran too deep to be soothed by belated guilt. The day Claire left the hospital, an unexpected development arose. Isla claimed in a statement to the police that she, too, was pregnant with Nathan's child. Word spread like wildfire, fueling speculation and scandal across Oakmere Hills. Overnight, the narrative shifted. Tabloids salivated over the possibility of dueling pregnant women, each carrying the child of a wealthy billionaire. Isla's accusations were deemed questionable, especially given her mental instability, but the claim alone was enough to stir up chaos. Shaken, Claire confronted Nathan about the possibility that Isla might be telling the truth. He looked equally troubled, swearing that he had always been careful with Isla, that he didn't believe she was pregnant. But the seeds of doubt were planted. The thought that Claire's child might share a sibling born from this violent, toxic affair was almost too much to bear. Even Rachel, who despised Nathan for his role in the entire tragedy, advised Claire to confirm or refute Isla's claim. "You need to know," she said gently, For your own peace of mind. Claire agreed, and Nathan volunteered to arrange for a paternity test if Layla would consent. In the meantime, Claire tried to stay focused on her own recovery, attending prenatal checkups where Dr. Naomi Brooks reassured her that, though her injuries were serious, her baby remained healthy and strong. As the trial date loomed for Layla, Claire found herself in a swirl of conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to see Isla locked away for good, ensuring her child would be safe from further harm. Another part remained haunted by pity, for a woman so consumed by desperation and obsession that she had thrown her life away. Worst of all, a quiet corner of Claire's mind acknowledged the role Nathan had played in fueling the entire catastrophe. If he had been honest, if he had ended his affair before it escalated, none of this might have happened. The day of Isla's preliminary hearing arrived with the usual media frenzy. Photographers lined the courthouse steps, eager to capture shots of the pregnant victim, the accused mistress, and the billionaire husband caught in the crossfire. Claire, wearing a long-sleeved blouse to hide her healing wounds, walked into the courtroom flanked by Rachel and a private security guard Nathan had insisted on hiring. Layla entered in handcuffs, her once glamorous demeanor replaced by hollow cheeks and a hardened glare. She did not look pregnant, but the mere possibility hung in the air like a dark cloud. She locked eyes with Claire, an undercurrent of hatred seething beneath her surface composure. During the hearing, the prosecution presented their evidence, highlighting Layla's repeated violations of boundaries, her threatening letter, and the brutal attack at Rachel's apartment. Layla's defense attorney attempted to paint her as a woman driven to emotional extremes by Nathan's manipulation, claiming he had made grand promises of divorce and a new life, only to renege when Claire's pregnancy complicated matters. The defense further alleged that Claire had provoked Layla, cornering her into a state of violent desperation. The turning point came when Detective Marcus Grant took the stand, meticulously detailing how the crime scene evidence contradicted Layla's claims of self-defense. Neighbors testified to hearing Claire scream for help, describing the violent break-in. The judge ruled in favor of proceeding to trial, and Isla was remanded to custody without bail, given the severity of the charges. Outside the courtroom, Claire felt torn between relief and fear. Knowing a lengthy trial lay ahead, she found no comfort in Nathan's company, who lingered near her like a shamed dog. The final blow of the day came when Layla's lawyer leaked a document to the press, a purported sonogram that Layla claimed was hers, fueling even more speculation about her alleged pregnancy. Nathan and Claire retreated from the ensuing chaos, heading straight home to the Whitmore estate for a tense discussion. Sitting in the drawing room of the estate, Nathan looked more fragile than Claire had ever seen him. Gone was the confident entrepreneur used to commanding boardrooms and social galas. In his place sat a man haunted by guilt, fear, and regret. Claire, still too weak for extended confrontations, sat quietly, waiting for him to speak. "You deserve better than this," he finally said. Nathan finally said, his voice low, "I can't undo what happened, but I want to take responsibility. I need to protect you and our child, financially, physically, and emotionally." Claire studied him, uncertain. "What are you saying?" Nathan inhaled shakily. "I've spoken with my attorneys. I'm going to file for divorce from you." Claire's eyes widened in shock, her heart pounding at the perceived betrayal. He quickly raised a hand as though to stop her from reacting. "Not because I want to be with Isla," he clarified, "but because I've caused you enough pain, and I'm not sure I can ever regain your trust. I think you and the baby deserve a fresh start, free from my mistakes." Claire stared at him, her emotions a riot of betrayal, relief, and heartbreak. She didn't know how to respond. For months, she had demanded that Nathan choose her unequivocally. Now, he seemed to be doing the opposite, severing ties in a gesture that might be interpreted as noble or as cowardly, depending on one's perspective. He continued, his voice trembling. "I'm transferring a substantial portion of my assets into a trust for you and the baby. You'll never have to worry about money. I know it's not enough to atone for what I've done, but it's a start. I don't expect you to forgive me or ever want me back. I just want you safe." Tears slid down Claire's cheeks. She had fantasized about leaving, about building a new life elsewhere. Yet the finality of it all, Nathan handing her a divorce and effectively admitting he'd lost the right to be her husband hit her harder than she had anticipated. A swirl of questions crowded her mind. Was this truly the best path forward, or was it another impulsive decision, fueled by guilt? "I never wanted your money," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "I wanted your love, your loyalty." He nodded, gaze downcast. "I know, and I failed you in the worst way. Maybe someday we can find a different path, but right now, this is what I can do." In that moment, Claire felt both heartbreak and an odd sense of release. This was not the fairy tale ending she had envisioned, nor was it an easy resolution. But perhaps it was a necessary one. The illusions that once bound them had shattered. Acceptance, no matter how painful, was the only way forward. While the divorce proceedings began, Layla's criminal trial loomed. Tensions simmered throughout Oakmere Hills. Claire found herself in a limbo of uncertainty, focusing on her physical recovery and planning for life after the final gavel struck on her marriage. She had begun searching for a new home in another part of the state, somewhere far from the memories that haunted her in Oakmere Hills. Each real estate listing she browsed felt like a quiet rebellion against everything that had once defined her. The marble floors, the chandeliers, the illusion of perfection. About 2 weeks before the trial was set to begin, shocking news rippled through the local media. Layla had lost the baby she claimed to be carrying. Speculation soared. Had she ever truly been pregnant? Or had she concocted the story as a desperate ploy for sympathy? Claire felt a mix of horror and grim relief. If Layla had truly been pregnant, the loss, no matter how manipulative she had been, was tragic. If the pregnancy had been a lie, it only confirmed the level of deceit Layla was capable of. And either outcome twisted Claire's stomach into knots. One possibility was heartbreaking, the other, diabolical. Either way, the news dealt a serious blow to Layla's credibility. In pre-trial hearings, the prosecution hammered home the point that Layla's claim had never been substantiated with legitimate medical records. Her sonogram appeared to be from a friend who was genuinely pregnant, a fact discovered when that friend came forward on the day of the trial. The courtroom murmured at the revelation, a ripple of disbelief and disgust that seemed to echo Claire's own reaction. Claire took the stand, her heart in her throat. She recounted the terrifying moments of the stabbing, describing how Layla had broken into Rachel's apartment under the pretense of bringing dire news about Nathan. The courtroom fell silent, all eyes on Claire, as she described the blade's cold glint, the burning pain of the stab wounds, and the sheer terror for her unborn child. At one point, her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. She clutched the witness stand with white knuckles, determined to make every word count. Layla sat expressionless. She offered no outbursts, no angry rebuttals, but her eyes, dark and fixed, never left Claire, like a storm held just beneath the surface. Her defense team tried to paint Claire as a scorned wife who had exaggerated the violence. But the physical evidence, Claire's injuries, the broken door chain, and the neighbor's testimony corroborated her account. And when Rachel testified, detailing Claire's screams, the blood on the floor, the knife glinting in Layla's hand, the defense's narrative crumbled further. It didn't take the jury long to return a guilty verdict on charges of aggravated assault and attempted murder. As the bailiff led Layla away, Claire felt a fleeting twinge of pity. Layla's eyes burned with hatred, but beneath that, there was a flicker of fear. She wasn't a monster. She was a woman consumed by obsession, one who had lost everything in the name of a man who never truly belonged to her. For a moment, Claire wondered if, under different circumstances, Layla might have sought help for her obsessive, destructive behaviors. But it was too late. Consequences had caught up with her. With Layla sentenced to a lengthy prison term, Claire found herself facing an uncertain but more peaceful future. The baby's arrival was imminent, and Claire poured her energy into preparing for motherhood. She invested in a small suburban home in Fairview, a few hours block drive from Oakmere Hills. It lacked the grandeur of the Whitmore estate, but its cozy warmth felt far more comforting than any mansion. The creak of wooden floors, the hum of a quiet heater, the light filtering through pale curtains. Here, she could breathe again. Nathan followed through on his promise, finalizing the divorce and setting up a trust for Claire and the baby. The settlement was generous, but Claire accepted it more out of practicality than any desire for luxury. She wanted her child to have financial stability, free from the burdens Nathan's affair had thrust upon them. On a crisp winter morning, Claire went into labor. Rachel was by her side the entire time. After hours of intense contractions, Claire gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The moment his cry pierced the room, something inside her cracked open, not with pain, but with awe. Exhausted yet filled with overwhelming love, she held her son against her chest, tears streaking her cheeks. In that moment, every tragedy she'd endured felt distant, overshadowed by the miracle of new life. She named him Ethan James Whitmore, honoring the father whose choices had broken her heart, but whose blood ran through their child's veins. It was a name born of both grief and grace, a bridge between past wounds and future hope. News of Ethan's birth reached Nathan quickly. He showed up at the hospital, hesitant, fear mingling with hope in his eyes. Claire allowed him in, albeit cautiously. The sight of Nathan cradling Ethan in his arms was both tender and heartbreaking. Nathan's hands shook slightly as he held the baby, as if he knew this moment wasn't his to claim, but to witness. For a fleeting moment they shared an unspoken bond, love for the tiny life they had created. Yet the wounds remained unhealed. The divorce papers were signed. Their paths had diverged irrevocably. Before Nathan left the hospital room, he gently kissed Ethan's forehead. Turning to Claire, he spoke softly. "Thank you. He's perfect." Claire managed a small smile, tears blurring her vision. They had come full circle, in a sense. Once lovers, now near strangers, bonded only by the innocent child in their midst. No matter how fractured their relationship might be, Ethan deserved to know his father, provided Nathan upheld his duties responsibly. Weeks turned into months, and Claire adjusted to her new life as a single mother. She found joy in every milestone of Ethan's growth, from his first gummy smiles to his early attempts at rolling over. Some nights, she would hold him long after he fell asleep, whispering promises she never got as a wife, but would give without hesitation as a mother. In those fleeting moments, the traumatic memories of Layla's attack and Nathan's betrayal felt like a distant storm. The scars on her body reminded her of the darkness she had survived. But each smile from Ethan offered a ray of hope. Nathan visited occasionally, always respectful of Claire's boundaries. Their interactions remained polite, tinged with the quiet sadness of what might have been. Sometimes, Claire caught a glimpse of regret in Nathan's eyes, as though he recognized the enormity of his loss. He never pressed for reconciliation, perhaps understanding that too much had transpired between them. Isla's case eventually faded from the headlines. She would spend a large portion of her life in prison, haunted by the choices she had made. Whatever dreams she once had, they were now caged behind steel bars, just like the obsession that had consumed her. The Whitmore name retained some of its old luster in Oakmere Hills, but the scandal had left an indelible mark. Claire's former acquaintances still gossiped about the affair and the attack. Yet as time went on, the city found new scandals to fixate upon. Claire, thankfully, was no longer part of their storyline, only a quiet whisper in a world that moved on without apology. Slowly, Claire built a small community for herself and Ethan. She reconnected with former colleagues from her teaching days and even considered returning to work part-time, hoping to carve out a future driven not by wealth or prestige, but by her own sense of purpose. Occasionally, she wondered if she could ever love again. The possibility both intrigued and terrified her. But now she knew. Love would have to meet her where she stood, stronger, wiser, unwilling to settle for anything less than truth. On a peaceful summer evening, Claire found herself rocking Ethan to sleep in the nursery she had lovingly decorated with soft pastels and gentle lullabies. As she gazed down at her son, she whispered a silent vow to protect him from the chaos that had once threatened his life. She had learned the painful truth that illusions, even grand ones, can shatter in an instant. Yet from the shards, one can still forge a new path, built on truth, not make-believe. In the end, Claire realized that the greatest wealth she could ever possess wasn't Nathan's fortune or social status. It was the wisdom earned through heartbreak, the love she shared with her child, and the strength to move forward, determined never again to let another person's disloyalty define her worth. Real trials don't always come with clean exits or satisfying revenge. Sometimes, The real victory is survival. The quiet rebuilding of a life on your own terms. Claire made the agonizing choice to stand on her own, refusing to let betrayal destroy her or endanger her unborn child. While Nathan was forever marked by the consequences of his affair, and Layla paid a steep price for her violent obsession, Claire found power in embracing her new reality. She learned that true security doesn't come from wealth or reputation. It comes from self-respect, courage, and an unshakable resolve to protect what matters most. Dear friend, life rarely announces its most important lessons with a warning. Like Claire, we often learn not through comfort, but through chaos, and sometimes through the silence that follows the storm. The Stoics believed we can't control what happens to us, only how we respond. Claire's story is living proof of that. She didn't choose betrayal, heartbreak, or fear, but she chose what came next. She chose to rise. If you're walking through your own dark chapter right now, remember, strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice that says, "I'll begin again." And that is enough. You are more than what broke you. You are who you become after. If this story moved you, if it gripped your heart, or simply reminded you of your own strength, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means everything. It helps us continue telling stories that heal, inspire, and remind us we're not alone in our storms. Until next time, stay grounded when the world shakes, stay brave when the sky darkens, and always, always cherish those who stand by you when the thunder rolls.